think that I will begin by conclusions. I don't know why. Okay. Perfecto. Oh. Okay, thank you very much. I should speak in Spanish, but I will do it in English because if not, we are going to be confused. What is ACTA? ACTA, as you can see, is a plurilateral international agreement. It is not an intellectual property agreement. It is an anti-counterfeiting trade agreement only. So there are lots of legends outside saying that ACTA will block generic drugs into the markets. I cannot see a single line in ACTA saying that. That ACTA will harm the patent of pharmaceutical products or encourage the pharmaceutical patents. You cannot see a single line in ACTA about that. With ACTA, because we have a chapter on digital environment, now the internet is not going to be free, that you will need a credit card to use internet, which is false. You cannot see anything related with that in ACTA. That Wikipedia is not going to be free anymore with ACTA. I don't know if that's a WikiLeaks or Wikipedia. Well, but what is all about? And in my presentation, I will give you some figures on Mexico counterfeiting and piracy, and you will see why Mexico became a part since the beginning. So we need to provide a more effective IP legal framework, but we need to have it internationally, not only domestically or nationally, because Mexico is not isolated from the rest of the world. We have, as Koji-san said, trade with many countries, and we need to have more or less the same protection and enforcement in all other countries, not only in Mexico, for our exporters, of course. We have to share the best enforcement practices through international cooperation. And we do believe that we need new global standards to enforce IPRs, intellectual property rights. Seems to me that TRIPS agreement needs an upgrade. It's a very old agreement. And that's why you see the list of the parties. In the two previous informal meetings, we have but unfortunately, they didn't have the mandate to follow the negotiations. So this is the list of the parties. You can see only two developing countries there, Morocco and Mexico. And why we became a part of ACTA? Because we know that the world is facing an enormous flood of counterfeiting and piracy around the world. This seriously threatens the IPR system, and I may say not only the IPR system, but even investment, technological transfer, security, safety, and more other things. Nowadays, illegal trade is 10% of the world economic business, with earnings, as you can see, of 2 billion, American billions, which are lots of zeros. And economies should be aware of the importance of deterring these kind of losses provided in the economic trade, and that's why we established ACTA. In October 23 of 2007, the President of Mexico himself approved that Mexico go to the negotiations in ACTA, and we made a formal announcement of Mexico participation in ACTA in that date. And in June 2008, we all began the formal negotiations. As you can see here, it is not only on the Mexican Institute of Industrial Property, which is the administrative authority in Mexico dealing with industrial property protection, but with intellectual property enforcement, which is not the same. So protection means that we grant patents or utility models or designs or trademarks, and enforcement means to enforce the law, okay? And in this case, INPI, Mexico, is in charge of enforcing the two laws, the copyright law and industrial property law. And that's why you can see in the left INPI, which is the Mexican Institute of Industrial Property that I head. At the right, you see the Copyright Office, INDAUTOR, that, by the way, was the one in charge of negotiating the digital environment section of ACTA. And I don't see if the Director General of INDAUTOR is here. He should be. Well, you can see the Foreign Affairs Minister. You can see the Attorney General, PGR. You see the Ministry of Economy, Customs, Taxes, Treasury, and the Telecommunications Federal Commission. So this is the group of public offices, authorities, that were involved in the negotiation of the whole agreement. As Koji-san said, we had the final round. We had 11 rounds, I think. And we have the final one in Tokyo, Japan, on September 23 to October 2nd, 2010. By the way, we have here with us Mrs. Hilda Gonzalez from INPI. She was the chief negotiator that participated in the 11th round of negotiations. So if my moderator agrees, in the section of questions and answers, I think that for the benefit of everybody, we may ask some of the negotiators. I can see negotiators from the European Union, from the United States, from Mexico. We can send questions to the audience. No? Now, why? Well, these are only some effects of counterfeiting and piracy in Mexico. As you can see, we lost 500,000 jobs only in 1 year, 2009. We have $1 billion losses for the industrial sector. And talking about taxes, we have losses, as you can see, of 888 million here on a special tax for products and services. The income tax, we have 327 million losses in 1 year. And the value-added tax, 125 million losses. So counterfeiting and piracy also hits the area on jobs and taxes. And that's why we believe that it is important to be part of FACTA. We have had a loss in 2009 in the area of customs of 9,000 million US dollars 1 year. Software, 1,000 million US dollars 1 year. Music, 400 million. Let me give you one detail here. In Mexico, in 2009, we had 5,000 million songs downloaded illegally with internet. Well, just put $1. And I think that the whole industry of music in Mexico doesn't worth that amount. And films, we have 300 million losses in 1 year. And footwear, 7% of the enterprises already closed. And someone said, well, the industry says, that we have illegal importation or fake shoes coming into the country on the amount of 200 million pairs of shoes a year. If you take into account that we in Mexico are 103 million, it means 2 pairs per people, per capita. I think that we are the champions there. Well, so we need to enhance IP cooperation. We need to promote innovation and competitiveness. And if we do not enforce strongly and effectively enforce IP rights, no one is going to be competitive in the market. And that's why we need to establish stronger legislative standards for IP protection. We presume that by doing that, we will attract foreign and domestic investment, companies, small and medium enterprises, that, by the way, accounts for 98% of all the industry in Mexico, SMEs. So we have to be very careful with this kind of segment of companies. And we, as you saw, we need to increase the tax revenue and foster formal employment. We need like 1 million new jobs a year. But if we are closing establishments due to piracy, I don't know how are we going to create 1 million jobs a year. And of course, that counterfeiting and piracy is not a serious competition. It is totally disadvantage for the companies that pay taxes and hire jobs. So we need to take that away. In Mexico, and according to our legislation and the procedure for this kind of international agreements, the executive branch has to sign the agreement and then send it to the Senate, which has the power to approve it or reject it. And in these months, we will do that, and we will have the ACTA sent to the senators. But the senators already, because some senators, of course, read some leaks in the past, and they are very worried about something. So they created already a working group that will review ACTA. And I think that's very good, because as I said since the beginning, there are lots of things in the air which are not in ACTA and will not be in ACTA, because that's another important thing. ACTA is closed. So anyone coming into ACTA should sign the ACTA as it is. There's no more negotiations, okay? And our moderator began saying the secrecy. Well, let me tell you that in Mexico, by law, we have the obligation of doing this kind of international negotiations reserved for the parties. And just think on one thing that happened when we were discussing ACTA. Korea was negotiated an agreement, I think that with the European Union. Imagine if the negotiations are public. What will happen? What will happen with the strategy of negotiations to the US or to Europe or to Korea? So we have to be careful when we negotiate an international agreement. So we will review ACTA. We will review precisely and specifically the digital environment section, which is not only Internet. Internet is a part. We do not say in ACTA that Internet service providers will become authorities and will go into the private rights of their clients. You won't see a single line saying that. So I think that what we need to do, as Koji presentation said, is to study ACTA before commenting and doing something. You have to analyze ACTA. It is not an easy agreement. It is not. It is very complicated because the subject is very complicated. But we have to do it. Thank you very much.